Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 17th City Council meeting. I am Gina Louise Shara. I'm the City Council President, and I will be presiding this evening. This meeting and all who participate in it with us on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. We will begin this evening with public comment, as we always do. If you know that you wish to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature. To raise your hand, you click on participants in the horizontal menu bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. A column will open up with the participants of the meeting. The raise hand feature is at the bottom of the column. If you're calling in by phone, you can raise your hand by hitting star 9. If you're having trouble raising your hand, you may use the chat feature to send a message to me. I will do my best to monitor that for people having technical difficulties, but that's the only purpose for which I will use that function. And we'll only use it during public comment. I will unmute each raised hand one by one and ask if you would like to make a comment. When you begin, please state your name and your city or town for the public record. To ensure everyone has the equal opportunity to speak, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, I will ask you to please finish your sentence. According to council rules, we do not respond during public comment. It's your time to speak. So while your comments should be directed to us, you'll understand when we don't respond to you. You may speak on absolutely any topic. It doesn't need to be an agenda item. Due to the size of the meeting and that it's public and how Zoom works, all participants need to be muted until called upon. I'll ask that all but the council turn off your video until called upon, as comments are directed to the council and only the person recognized has the floor or the camera. We will do our best to act quickly if someone is acting clearly in a way that's inappropriate, deploying profanity or slurs, or displaying something outside of what one would expect in council chambers. And I will remove anyone that needs to be removed from the meeting. If you don't wish to make a comment, we ask that you watch on Channel 15 or by streaming on Northampton Open Media through their YouTube channel or their other platforms. The recording of this meeting will be available on Northampton Open Media's Government Video Archive channel on YouTube, and I thank them as always for that access. I'll remind people we're always happy to receive comment by email, which is equally part of our public record, is talking to us over public comment on Zoom. So please email us at citycouncil@northamptonma.gov. So as of right now, I only see one hand, which is James Lowenthal. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm James Lowenthal. I live at 181 Crescent Street. I helped write the statewide dark sky bills, and I helped write Resolution 20.112 in support of those bills that you will consider tonight. And I hope very much you'll vote in favor of the resolution. Thanks again to Councilors Karen Foster, Alex Jarrett, and Rachel Maori for co-sponsoring the resolution, and to the rest of the council for your support. As most of you probably know, work is almost finished on a major transportation project here in Northampton, the new 2-lane, I'm not talking about downtown, the new 2-lane roundabout at I-91 exit 19, Route 9, Damon Road. It's a major mass DOT project, and it comes with new lights, lots of them. The lighting plan calls for 32 LED lights of 144 watts each with blinding glare. That's the equivalent of 240 of the 19-watt LEDs Northampton has for most of its streetlights. 240 of them all packed into that one intersection right next to private houses and sensitive natural habitat along the Connecticut River. It'll look like Times Square or Las Vegas, and it'll be 200 times brighter than the full moon all night, every night. This is exactly the kind of wasteful, harmful, unnecessary overuse of lighting that the twin dark sky bills S 1937 and H 2858 are intended to guard against. If the bills make it out of the Senate Ways and Means Committee and voted into law, they would apply common sense rules to state-funded projects like this, such as that the lights all must be fully shielded against glare. The bills will save Massachusetts cities and towns money and reduce light pollution at the same time. There's no opposition on record to the bills, and they have broad support. It's a win-win. Thanks for considering this resolution in support of those bills, and I hope you'll vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Nash. So Councillor Nash is going to assist someone with making public comment. The person that we've been struggling with being able to unmute on her phone. Councilor Nash, do you have Ms. Friedman
I
on?
have Hildegard on my phone here. We'll see if this works.
Okay.
Hildegard?
Yes,
We can hear you.
my name is Hildegard Friedman. My phone number is 413-582-7081. I live in Northampton. And first, I want to praise the extraordinary work that the mayor is endeavoring to do with the Policing Review Commission. I have been on board only since late winter 2020, and this absolutely inimitable Jim Nash and Laura Kretzler have jumped in and done so much in their communication with me. It is absolutely ineffable to describe. I want you to devote yourself as you are to helping America, along with these people and the council, the city council, and the people who have been discriminated against. That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay. I wasn't sure if you said that's it or you were continuing. Thank you so much. Hildegard, I just want to really apologize that we've been having such trouble being able to get you unmuted on your phone. I'm very sorry about that. I know we'd had luck with it earlier in the summer and it stopped working. So we're still endeavoring to figure out what's going on, but I just want to give you my apologies for those times that you haven't been able to comment. So thank you very much for persevering and working with Councilor Nash. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Ezekiel Baskin.
Hi, I just wanted to speak briefly in favor of the changes proposed by the Charter Review Commission around voting, specifically lowering the age for voting in municipal elections, which I know is on the agenda, not for today, but worth mentioning, and extending the right to vote in municipal elections to non-citizens, and mailing ballots to all voters, and using ranked choice voting for municipal elections. I think those are all brilliant progressive electoral reforms that we should be engaging with in Northampton and modeling for the rest of the state and the country. And I hope you follow the Charter Review suggestions and enact those. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let me just, Dave, I'm hearing that your stream isn't happening yet. I just thought I'd let you know that. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment? I don't see any other hands, but I'm gonna give it a moment. I also don't see anyone in the chat trying to get through, so unless there's anybody else who'd like to raise their hand, we will convene. So Laura, will you please take the roll? Thank you. Oh, Laura?
Councilor Dwight?
Oh, you were muted, Laura.
I was muted, I'm sorry. Councilor Dwight,
Here.
Councilor Foster,
Here.
Councilor Jarrett,
Here.
Councilor Labarge,
Here.
Councilor Maori, Councilor Maori?
Here.
There you go.
Councilor Nash,
Here.
Councilor Quinlan,
Here.
Councilor Shara,
Here.
and Councilor Thorpe.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, our first item is the announcement of a public hearing. This is 20.109 National Grid Verizon New England poll petition for Prospect Street. This is petition number 299-14250. For Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 22, a public hearing will be held on Thursday, October 1st, 2020 at at 7:05 p.m. on the petition of National Grid Verizon New England to erect poles and wires upon, along, under, or across one or more public ways on Prospect Street. The hearing will be held via remote participation. Please see the agenda for the October 1st, 2020 City Council meeting for instructions for accessing this hearing, and it will be properly and legally noticed. Next, do we have any updates from committee chairs? Councilor Nash.
Well, I think you guys all are aware of this, but I just want to repeat that Community Resources will be meeting next Monday at 5 o'clock to begin discussing the plastic reduction and sustainability notice ordinance, and that the plan is to introduce the proposed ordinance to the committee and the public. We have asked Noah Cases to help with that introduction. He's pulling together a PowerPoint, and then we will be discussing how we will do how we want to go about doing outreach around this proposed ordinance. And public comment is welcome, but we are looking at other ways to seek public comment beyond just that one meeting. So just wanted to let everybody know about that.
Thank you. Any other chair announcements? Okay, how about 1-minute announcements? Okay. Oh, Councilor Foster.
Thank you. I was spending my time looking for the raise hand feature, but I'm a co-host. I just wanted to spend a minute recognizing and thanking our schools. The schools began remote learning on Wednesday, and it was a big lift from school committee to school administration to the teachers and the parents who are supporting that. And I've seen so many moving parts coming together in the best they can in really, really troubling circumstances to do the best they can for our kids. And just wanted to recognize how much behind the scenes and hard work has gone into that from so many different people.
Thank you. Hear, hear. I can't even begin to count the amount, the number of school committee meetings that they've had all summer, actually, but just even this past month, and all the work that's gone on. So thank you for that. Any other 1-minute announcements? Mayor Narkowitz, any communications from you?
I have no communications tonight.
Okay, thank you. So next up we have under resolutions 20.112, a resolution in support of an act improving outdoor lighting and increasing dark sky visibility. This is on second reading.
Move approval, please.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on second reading. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Councilor Dwight,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori.
One.
I can't see her face.
No.
She's muting and unmuting herself. Too
Okay,
fast.
so yes.
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Nash. Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
and Councilor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously in second reading. Moving to the consent agenda, I'm going to read the titles of the items and ask if there are any removals for discussion, as there's no discussion on the consent agenda. So on the consent agenda, we have 20.106 appointments to various committees. These have all received a positive recommendation with changes as indicated by the City Services Committee. First, Arts Council, there has been an application that was withdrawn. So next is Lori Steiner, 18 Ridgewood Terrace, for the term July 2020 to June 2023. That's a reappointment. Next is the Board of Health. Dr. Suzanne Smith at 134 State Street, the term of July 2020 to June 2023. That's a reappointment. Conservation Commission, Kevin Lake, 35 Washington Avenue, term July 2020 to June 2023, another reappointment. Downtown Business Architecture Committee, Emily Wright of 244 South Street, term is July 2020 to June 2023. This is to fill a vacancy. Human Rights Commission, Nural Mohammed at 34 Michaelman Avenue, apartment 2. This term is July 2020 to September 2020, a reappointment. Also for the Human Rights Commission, Deirdre Cuffey Gray, 2 Burt's Pit Road, term August 2020 to June 2023 to fill a vacancy. And Chelsea Villarreal, 23A Lyman Road, term August 2020 to June 2023 to fill a vacancy.
Yeah,
Next.
move approval.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry.
wait, we got ways to go.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was too
Okay.
excited. I'm just back off.
Next is 20.125, petition to operate a bowling alley per Northampton Code Section 124.2. It shall be unlawful for any person to operate a pool hall, including keepers of billiard, pool, or Scipio tables, or a bowling alley without first obtaining a license granted by the mayor and city council. So this is a weekday license and a Sunday license for Northampton Bowl at 525 Pleasant Street, and the petitioner is J. Michael Corley. Next, we have 20.127. These are appointments to various committees for referral to City Services Committee. For the Arts Council, Ashlyn Craddock at 386 Bridge Street for the term September 2020 to June 2023. This is to fill a vacancy. Conservation Commission, Jennifer Smith, 24 Audubon Road in Leeds. Term September 2020 to June 2023 to fill a vacancy. For the Disability Commission, Kathy Murray, 50 Laurel Park. Term September 2020 to June 2023 to fill a vacancy. Human Rights Commission, Susan McDonald Bolanos, 1 Chapin Way, Unit 7517 at Smith College. Term September 2020 to June 2022 to fill a vacancy. For the Planning Board, Jana White, this is a full member of the Planning Board, term September 2020, June 2022. This is to fill the unexpired term of Euripides de Oliveira. And Chris Tate, 46 Upland Road in Leeds. This is an associate member of the Planning Board, term September 2020 to June 2021. This is to fill the unexpired term of Jana White, who is becoming a full member. And that is the extent of the consent agenda. Any removals?
Move approval, please.
Wait, hold on, Councillor Nash. Councillor Nash.
You read Chris Tate?
I did.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so motion's been made, and was it seconded? It was seconded by Councilor Labarge. Okay. And roll call, please, on the consent agenda, Laura. You're muted.
Okay, just want to make a note that I'm not able to share my screen, or I would. So just to.
Okay, I will, while you're doing a roll call, I will work on that.
That'd be great. Okay, Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Councillor Dwight.
Yes.
The consent agenda passes. I'm trying to solve this screen sharing issue. Laura, I'm going to make you, we'll try and make you the host, and I will be the co-host, and that should resolve it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
And I may have lost my co-host status. Could you make me a co-host?
Sure.
And then I think we're good. And I will also note that anyone who's trying to watch Northampton Open Media, it's up on channel 12, Facebook and Twitch, and both of their YouTube accounts. there was something that wasn't working, but all those are working right now. So thank you very much, Northampton Open Media. Okay, so consent agenda has been done. So next up, we have 20.128. This is a warrant for the November 3rd, 2020 state election. And this is on first reading. I will read it. So 20.128, a warrant to establish the date, time, and location of an upcoming state election in City Council, July 30th, 2020. That's not the right date. We will change that. Upon the recommendation of City Clerk Pamela L. Powers, ordered meetings of the inhabitants qualified to vote in the City of Northampton will be held on Tuesday, the 3rd day of November 2020 in several polling places designated for this purpose by the City Council as follows. Ward 1, Precinct A in Jackson Street School Auditorium. Ward 1, Precinct B in Jackson Street School Auditorium. Ward 2, Precinct A in Smith Vocational Agricultural High School Building B. Ward 2, Precinct B in Smith Vocational Agricultural High School Building B. Ward 3, Precinct A in the Senior Center, Great Room 67 Conn Street. Same with Precinct B of Ward 3 in the Senior Center, Great Room 67 Conn Street. Ward 4, Precinct A in the Senior Center, Pat's Front Room 67 Conn Street. Ward 4, Precinct B in the Senior Center, Activity Room number 1 at 67 Conn Street. Ward 5, Precinct A in Florence Civic and Business Building at 90 Park Street. Ward 5, Precinct B in Smith Vocational Agricultural High School Building B. Ward 6, Precinct A in Robert K. Finn Ryan Road School Gymnasium, and same with Precinct B of Ward 6 and Robert K. Finn Ryan Road School Gymnasium. Ward 7, Precinct A in John F. Kennedy Middle School Community Room. Ward 7, Precinct B in Leeds School Gymnasium Lower Level. The polls will be opened at 7 o'clock in the forenoon and closed at 8 o'clock in the evening of the said day, and all such members will, in the wards in which they are entitled to vote between said hours, given their votes for the following offices: electors for president and vice president, senator in Congress for this Commonwealth, representative in Congress for the 2nd Congressional District, counselor for the 8th District, senator in General Court for Hampshire, Franklin, and Worcester District, representative in General Court for the 1st Hampshire District, register of probate for Hampshire County. They will also give their votes yes or no to the following questions. Question 1, law proposed by initiative petition. Do you approve of the law summarized below on which no vote was taken by the Senate or the House of Representatives on or before May 5th, 2020? Summary, the proposed law would require that motor vehicle owners and independent repair facilities be provided with expanded access to mechanical data related to vehicle maintenance and repair. Starting with model year 2022, the proposed law would require manufacturers of motor vehicles sold in Massachusetts to equip any such vehicles that use telematic systems that collect and wirelessly transmit mechanical data to a remote server with a standardized open access data platform. Owners of motor vehicles with telematic systems would get access to mechanical data through a mobile device application. With vehicle owner authorization, independent repair facilities, those not affiliated with the manufacturer, and independent dealerships would be able to retrieve mechanical data from and send commands to the vehicle for repair, maintenance, and diagnostic testing. Under the proposed law, manufacturers would not be allowed to require authorization before owners or repair facilities could access mechanical data stored in a motor vehicle's onboard diagnostic system, except through an authorized process standardized across all makes and models and administered by an entity unaffiliated with the manufacturer. The proposed law would require the Attorney General to prepare a notice for prospective motor vehicle owners and lessees explaining telematic systems and the proposed law's requirements concerning access to the vehicle's mechanical data. Under the proposed law, dealers would have to provide prospective owners with, and the prospective owners would have to acknowledge receipt of, the notice before buying or leasing a vehicle. Failure to comply with these notice requirements would subject motor vehicle licensed dealers to sanctions by the applicable licensing authority. Motor vehicle owners and independent repair facilities can enforce this law through state consumer protection laws and recover civil penalties of the greater of treble damages or $10,000 per violation. A yes vote would provide motor vehicle owners and independent repair facilities with expanded access to wirelessly transmitted mechanical data related to their vehicles, maintenance, and repair. A no vote would make no change in the law governing access to vehicles' wirelessly transmitted mechanical data. Okay, now the next one. This is a law proposed by initiative petition. Do you approve of a law summarized below on which no vote was taken by the Senate or House of Representatives on or before May 5th, 2020? Summary, this proposed law would implement a voting system known as ranked choice voting, quote unquote, in which voters rank one or more candidates by order of preference. Ranked choice voting would be used in primary and general elections for all Massachusetts statewide offices, state legislative offices, federal congressional offices, and certain other offices beginning in 2022. Ranked choice voting would not be used in elections for president, county commissioner, or regional district school committee member. Under the proposed law, votes would be counted in a series of rounds. In the first round, if one candidate received more than 50% of the first place votes, that candidate would be declared the winner and no other rounds would be necessary. If no candidate received more than 50% of first place votes, and the candidate or candidates who received the fewest first place votes would be eliminated, and in the next round, each vote for an eliminated candidate would instead be counted towards the next highest ranked candidate on that voter's ballot. Depending on the number of candidates, additional rounds of counting could occur, with the last place candidate or candidates in each round being eliminated and the votes for eliminated candidate going to the voter's next choice out of the remaining candidates. A tie for last place in any round would be broken by comparing the tied candidate's support in earlier rounds. Ultimately, the candidate who was, out of the remaining candidates, the preference of a majority of voters would be declared the winner. Ranked choice voting would be used only in races where a single candidate is to be declared a winner, and not in races where more than one person is to be elected. Under the proposed law, if no candidate received more than 50% of the first place votes in the first round, the rounds of ballot counting necessary for ranked choice voting would be conducted at a central tabulation facility. At the facility, voters' rankings would be entered into a computer, which would then be used to calculate the results of each round of the counting process. The proposed law provides that candidates in a statewide or district election would have at least 3 days to request a recount. The Secretary of State would be required to issue regulations to implement the proposed law and conduct a voter education campaign about ranked choice voting process. The proposed law would take effect on January 1st, 2022. A yes vote would create a system of ranked choice voting in which voters would have the option to rank candidates in order of preference, and votes would be counted in rounds, eliminating candidates with lowest votes until one candidate has received a majority. A no vote would make no change in the laws governing voting and how votes are counted.
I would like to move approval with the Scrivener's error adjusted to reflect the date being September 17, 2020, as opposed to July 30, 2020.
Second.
Okay, that has been made and seconded, and now I've done the work for you. When you go to the polls, you don't have to read these. You know what they say already from my dulcet tones. Any further discussion or any discussion? We have the city clerk with us, Pam Powers. Clerk Powers, would you like to be recognized to talk about this warrant?
Well, I think it pretty much speaks for itself. It's all of the stuff that we've been working towards for the entire year. The presidential primary and the state primary candidates are all on this ballot, as are the two additional questions that we will be voting on. So that's it.
Can I ask you a question? Why is it a warrant for state election as opposed to state and federal?
That's a good question. A lot of people have been asking that. It's not a federal election. It's the state election in which we elect the electors for president, right? So it's considered a state election. Most of the positions on the ballot are actually state positions, not federal positions.
Okay. Councilor Foster.
This isn't directly related to the warrant, but Pam, can you talk about voter turnout at the last election and with mail-in ballots, how that looked compared to what you would expect in a typical primary election?
Well, obviously, people had the opportunity to either vote by mail, vote in person, or if they chose to get a vote by mail ballot, but then wanted to go to the polls, that was their option as well. We had a tremendous turnout. 53% of the registered voters voted in the state primary. 7,900 people voted as early voters, with 7,200 of those people actually voting by mail. So it was a tremendous turnout for us. We received over 9,000 applications to get those 7,000 ballots. So it was a great turnout for this election. Compared to the 2016 state election, which was about 35% turnout, this was much higher for this particular state election before the state election for a president choice.
Thank you. Councillor Dwight.
It's worth noting, of course, there was only one contested race on our ballot.
Mhm.
And the fact that that turnout gives me some modicum of hope. And I mean, I would hate to compare it with the numbers that turn out for municipal elections, because I don't think we fare quite as well, but not even close. But the fact that there is certainly an engaged electorate at this point, and I'd imagine that the turnout for the presidential election will exceed what you experience for the primary. At least I hope it does.
Right. So right now we have over 10,000 applications ready in our queue to send folks their November ballot, and I expect that number will grow tremendously over the next couple of weeks. So 10,000 ballots for sure are going out the door probably the first week of October. We've been promised all of our ballots and our envelopes no later than October 5th. So I think it will take about a full week to get to process those requests, and people should have their ballots hopefully no later than October 13th. It should, it also too, part of that 10,000 number are folks who are overseas, who live abroad, and have requested to vote in this particular election. And they've already received their ballots. I already mailed those out. Actually, most of them were emailed. I had a handful that were mailed via the post office, but I've already received a handful back as well. So we had about just under 200 people who have requested to vote from overseas, and I have about 20 ballots that have already been received back. So
thank you. And I know this is going to be a very busy season for you. So thank you for everything. I know you've not really gotten a break.
It's there's a lot of work to it, but I think it's pretty rewarding. Actually, it's to see the turnout the way that it was, and to hear people, be appreciative of the fact that they have this as a way to still participate and not be concerned about any health risks is great. It's really great. So.
Thank you. Councillor Labarge.
Yes, Pam, I want to thank you and all your staff. I know what time you're in there early in the morning, and if we're down in Hamp in the evenings, there's Pam still working. Thank you very, very much, and your staff.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilor Labarge.
Councillor Maori.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the clerk if you're still looking for election workers for the November election.
So right now we have quite a few people who have responded to the all of the posts that you guys have done, the emails that you've sent out, and I feel pretty confident that we're going to be able to fill all the positions that we need at this point. People can still, drop out at the last minute. So we're still encouraging people to send their applications if they're so inclined. But in addition to working the November 3rd election, there's a couple of other operations that we have. Obviously, the early voting is going to be taking place beginning October 17th through October 30th, where we will have in-person voting down at the Senior Center again. Mostly during the day, 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, and then 5 hours each day on Saturday and Sunday. So we're looking to staff that as well. In addition, if you can imagine, sorry about that. If you can imagine that we have what it looks like to have to sort 10,000 ballots, we need hands to be able to do that as well. So we've got a pretty good handle on the applications. When those ballots start coming in, though, we're going to need people to help us sort them. And we'll be looking for people from those applications that are coming in. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions for Powers or anything pertaining to this warrant? Okay, seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
and Counselor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in first reading. Oh, Counselor Labarge?
Yes, I was just wondering if our city clerk, Pamela Powers, would like a second reading on this tonight, or does she want to wait tomorrow?
Well, we don't need to do a second reading tonight. We've got enough time before it needs to be posted locally. So it's really up to you, to the council, whether or not they'd like to have the second reading. I'm okay with waiting for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, well, that passed in first reading, so we will do the second reading as we normally do. And thank you so much, Clerk Powers. Okay, next up, we have the Charter Review Commission recommendations. I want you to hearken back to March 5th. That's the meeting when we took up the Charter Review Committee recommendations, and I think we felt quite accomplished at that meeting to have reviewed and voted on most of the recommendations, and we then planned on taking up the remaining ones at subsequent meetings. And we're going to work with the city solicitor to craft the language. I don't need to tell anyone that everything changed between March 5th and our next meeting on March 19th. So we find ourselves 6 months later, and we thank the Charter Review Committee for their patience. After working for a year on their recommendations, no one thought that then this part would be stalled for such a long hiatus for a city, state, national, global emergency. So thank you for being patient with us. I'm going to remind us sort of what the process was way back in the before times. So what we're doing is we're voting on each individual recommendation that has been given to us by the Charter Review Committee. And discussion and acceptance of those recommendations are done in collaboration with the mayor, because both branches need to agree on the version that will go forward to the legislature. So I also thank Mayor Narkowitz for taking this back up with us now. Some recommendations had proposed language, but those were generally the items that were being amended, that were already in the charter and were being amended. We have voted on most of those, though we will review the answers to a couple of questions that we'd had and still need to vote on one of them. And that's section 3-9. Other items like the ones that we have on the agenda for today and for a subsequent meeting will need the language crafted by the solicitor once we and the mayor have come to an agreement on how we'd like to proceed on the recommendation. And then the order itself will need to be written with the solicitor. So I think I know of at least 2 Charter Review Committee, well, 3 with Councilor White.
Well, 4 then.
Oh, am I missing?
Yeah, Bob Boldrice is also here.
Oh, there, hi.
And the city solicitor who was an ex officio member, but.
So we will vote in a moment to recognize them so that they can talk to us about this. So first, let's maybe handle the language clarification that we'd requested on items that we discussed on March 5th, if that's okay. Because I think that we can handle those sort of quickly. So those were mostly pertaining to the correct names and terms for Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School. So the school is referred to in multiple ways in the charter. And we want to have it sort of globally be correct throughout the charter. So Solicitor Seawald worked with Superintendent Lincoln Hooker, who found the minutes from 1994 where the trustees officially voted on to change the name to Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School. So that was one question we'd had, which is how should it be referred to? And the answer we got from the solicitor is that with that vote by the trustees in 1994, it is officially Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School, and that is how, that's the correct name and how it should be referred. So that's one answer we can acknowledge and thank the solicitor for. Then the other question we had, still on Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School, there was a question on how to refer to the governing body, which serves as a local board of trustees. And the solicitor found, based on a 1920 amendment to the number of superintendents of what is now Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School, it's the solicitor's opinion that they should be referred to as the superintendents of Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School in the charter. So I just wanted to make sure that we knew that we had those answers, those two questions that we'd had. Maybe the solicitor, do we need to vote on these, or this is just how we're a change that we all agree is going to be made? Anyone have a thought or opinion on that? Counselor Dwight.
Actually, a question that came up relative to referring to the trustees as superintendents, of course, creates possibility for confusion, because there is a superintendent that is actually by appointment, and as opposed to the superintendents who actually were also known as trustees. And I don't know if the solicitor has any recommendations about making the distinction, or should that be embedded in the language at all? I'm not sure.
Okay, there he is.
There's also, good evening, everyone. There's always the possibility of a formal change to trustees, but until that change is made, they are the superintendents. And I do understand that there is some ambiguity between the superintendent and the superintendents. This is, they function as a board of trustees. That's what the statute says. Right. The superintendents, the 5 superintendents function as a board of trustees. So, maybe in the course of this process, we would ask the trustees to formally change their name to trustees. That's also a possibility to avoid that confusion. But I'm not sure how else we would avoid that confusion, because there's nothing in the statute, and the superintendent didn't find anything, by which the name of the governing persons was changed.
Mayor Narkowitz, did you want to weigh in?
Just only to say, as one of those, I guess, superintendents, I've never been referred to by that, but we've always called ourselves the Board of Trustees. I will say that I think Superintendent Lincoln Hooker may be only like the 3rd superintendent in the history of the school, because it used to be the director. They used to call used to always be called the director for, from the very beginning of time. So I don't know if that was the contrast between the school director, and then there were superintendents. There was a point at a certain juncture a few superintendents ago where the director's name was changed to superintendent, and it may have just been to align with educational norms of surrounding districts or something. But so anyway, that may have been the reason, but I definitely think it's something that probably now that we have a superintendent, that we probably should take it up. But for now, I guess if this is what it's called, this is what it's called. But I do think it's confusing.
Okay. And is there anything maybe Solicitor Seawald, you could answer this. Is there anything we as the council need to do on these 2 questions, or they've been answered, but we don't need to vote on how they're... I
believe you should.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're frozen.
Okay. I think there should be a vote to globally alter any reference to Smith Agricultural School or Smith Agricultural School to Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School. I think there should be a vote on that.
Great. And okay, so is there a motion on
I move to make all references to Smith Vocational Agricultural School or any other iteration be changed to reflect that it is Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School from here on in.
Second.
And that one.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion, further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay. And so in the question of whether they're trustees or superintendents, they're already referred to as superintendents, which is correct. Is that right? So there's not, that remains. We don't need to vote on that. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing we're going to take up is we're going to go back to section 3.9, which we discussed at the March 5th meeting. But since we had questions for the solicitor, the motion on 3.9 was withdrawn, so we'll need a new motion to discuss it. So can I get a motion on this section, which is language about, so the section is vacancy in the office of the mayor. So can we get a motion on that and then?
I move that we reconsider that, what is it, section 3.9, for purposes of amending.
Second.
Second. Sorry.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. So I am gonna, to sort of frame what the question is here, I'm just gonna read the solicitor's response because I think it sufficiently relays the question. So his answer was, with regard to section 3-9D, issues in response to Councillor Foster's concern, the committee was aware, meaning the Charter Review Committee, was aware of the potential realignment of the 4-year mayoral term should a mayor resign in the first half of the term. I could not identify any legal issues arising out of that change. The overarching goal of the committee was for the city to have a mayor elected in the normal electoral process as soon as possible. Councillor Jarrett's concerned about the final phrase of this subsection, quote, serve a 4-year term, end quote, ending at the next mayoral election. I believe that the phrase read in conjunction with section 3-1B makes clear that the 4-year term ends on the first Monday in January. If the council would like to be more specific in this regard, I suggest, with the concurrence of the committee chair, changing the phrase to, quote, shall serve a 4-year term in accordance with section 3-1B, end quote. So it'd be that addition to that section.
I move that as an amendment.
Second.
Okay, so any discussion on this amendment to sort of clarify that section?
Could you just read that again, Councilor Shara, please?
Read what we're going to add to the section. Okay. So it would be changing the phrase shall serve a 4-year term to shall serve a 4-year term in accordance with section 3-1B. And okay. 3-1B is the term of office section.
Thank you.
Councillor Jarrett.
And just to clarify, that's in section D of section 3.9-9, paragraph D, whatever it's called.
That is section 3-9 and D. Yeah, so the last sentence of that section is the person elected at such a regular city election shall be sworn to office immediately and shall serve a 4-year term. So it will say shall serve a 4-year term in accordance with section 3-1B.
Great.
Okay. other questions or discussion on this section? So Stan Moulton, who is the chair of the Charter Review Committee, is going to be, can we put aside, can we vote to, we need to vote to recognize the Charter Review Committee members.
I move that we recognize Stan Moulton, the chair, Vice Chair Sam Hopper, and Charter Review Committee member Bob Boldrice. And the rest of us are actually already recognized.
We're not missing
Second.
anything, right? Okay. Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on recognizing these folks? Nope. Okay, roll call please on recognizing.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes?
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Point of information, I think we need a vote on the amendments that we just proposed before we proceed to discussion about the charter.
Well,
Because there was a motion put on the floor to actually amend. So there's a motion pending on that amended language. So I'm just wondering if it's.
well, but Mr. Moulton, do you want to speak to that amendment?
I want to speak to the answer that the solicitor sent to you that answered the question that was raised, actually the two questions that were raised at the March 5th meeting. So I'm not sure if I'm speaking to the amendment or to his communication with you.
Well, his communication on this section is the amendment that's on the floor right now. So
yes, I will speak to that.
okay. Please, thank you. Welcome.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Well, it's good to be back with the city council. I appreciate your reviving discussion of the recommendations after this unforeseen 6-month hiatus. Solicitor Seawald did consult with Sam and I about our recollection of the committee's discussion of the possibility of a change in the mayoral election cycle if the mayor left office during the first half of his or her 4-year term. The committee felt it was more important that the will of the electorate decide who's filling the mayor's office rather than the appointment by city council, which is the reason why we would, we don't have a problem with the mayoral cycle reverting to the next general election, and the city solicitor has not found any legal issues with that. So we're comfortable with that possibility.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Any other discussion on this section 3.9? Okay. Seeing none. Roll call, please, Laura.
Sure. Could someone just remind me of who the second was on the motion that Councillor Dwight made?
Councillor Labarge?
That was
Yes.
That was Councillor Foster.
Councillor Foster?
No,
Thank you.
No, it was not Councillor Foster.
no, it wasn't.
We're gonna go
Okay.
to Councillor Labarge.
Okay.
The default.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
and Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we're going to move to the Article 8, which is the election recommendations. The remaining recommendations that we're going to take up that we haven't yet taken up are in this section and are without recommended language. So in conjunction with the mayor, we need to decide how to proceed, and Solicitor Seawald will craft the legal language. The two on the agenda for today are ranked choice municipal voting and extending voting rights in municipal elections to non-citizens. The remaining items, lowering the municipal voting age to 16, mailing ballots for municipal elections to all registered voters, removing the need to cite a specific reason to receive an absentee ballot for municipal elections, and any like final cleanup or last check that we do to make sure we haven't missed anything, that's going to happen at a future meeting. So the first one we're going to take up is a recommendation to adopt ranked choice voting for municipal elections. I'm just going to quickly read the committee's summary paragraph, and then I will ask us for a motion to discuss it, and I'm sure we will recognize members of the committee again, and we'll confer with the mayor. So, so this is on the motion to adopt ranked choice voting for municipal elections, the committee says this recommendation received overwhelming community support as evidenced by testimony at the April 30th forum. Benefits include eliminating the need of costly preliminary elections that are a scheduling challenge, preventing the negative effect of vote splitting and bullet voting, and encouraging more positive campaigning that potentially results in more candidates and increased voter participation. Okay, can we have a motion?
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilor Dwight and seconded by, was that Councilor Thorpe?
It was.
Excellent. Okay. Stan, do you, I stole your thunder a little bit by reading the election warrant. But would you like to sort of walk us through this a bit?
Actually, I've asked Bob Bullrice, who is the committee's ranked choice voting expert, to summarize our position.
Okay. I am asking Bob to unmute.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the council. It provided a good opportunity for me to refresh my memory on why it was that during the course of our deliberations, ranked choice voting received virtual universal approval from 100 different speakers and testifiers during the course of our deliberation. It is true, Madam Chair, that I would have reviewed those points, and I will in a minute. But perhaps just to bring us all up to speed on what's happened over the course of the summer and where we stand now. By way of setting the table, it can be said now that 4 million Americans vote for candidates by using ranked choice voting. Those Americans live in jurisdictions that include Portland, Maine, San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, California, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Tacoma Park, Maryland, and Telluride, Colorado. Cambridge, Massachusetts, of course, has been doing it for about 40 years. Recently, East Hampton and Amherst have voted to implement ranked choice voting, and very recently, so also did New York City. So the momentum and support for ranked choice voting as a better way to elect our officials continues to grow. In the Commonwealth, it just so happens that not a lot has occurred since last we talked. And a number of us, I went up to the legislature and spoke to the joint houses twice, and I thought that they would take up the bills. There are 4 bills in front of the legislature now, one in the House, one in the Senate, each for local jurisdictional control to implement ranked choice voting, and then a separate set of bills in the House and the Senate to make it statewide. Now, in the face of the petition that went forward, which is now going to reveal itself as Massachusetts ballot question 2 in November, the citizen initiative supporting ranked choice voting, I can imagine that the legislature decided they would wait and see how that worked out before they took up the bills that we had followed. So one hopes that the Commonwealth votes favorably for ranked choice voting. It must be noted that Proposition 2 just deals with state offices and some county offices. So if the petition passes in November, it's not going to help Northampton out, only indirectly. It is felt that if it passes statewide, the legislature will be much more inclined to look favorably upon the individual initiatives that come from the various municipalities. And in fact, there will be state support for technology and resources to help implement it in the municipalities. So one hopes that the initiative does pass. During the course of our deliberations, we essentially focused on five points. The first one is that ranked choice voting ensures a majority support by eliminating the spoiler effect. And that is, you know, that minimizes strategic voting. It no longer requires bullet voting or voting for the lesser of two evils. Majority support will elect officials for local positions. And that's deemed to be a very, very important thing. Very recently in the primary, a stunning example of the spoiler effect occurred in Massachusetts U.S. House District 4 in the primary, the Democratic primary. It turned out that there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 candidates running. Mr. Auschenschloss was deemed to be the winner with 22% of the votes. There were at least 5 candidates who had double-digit support, and then the others received, you know, thousands of votes as well. So in a situation such as that, you can hardly say that while Mr. Auschenschloss was deemed to be the winner, it is entirely unlikely that he received a majority of support. So one of the great attributes of ranked choice voting is that it has a way of electing people who have garnered a majority of support among the electorate in the cities, and that's considered to be a very important thing. So ensures majority support by eliminating the spoiler effect. It minimizes strategic voting, no bullet voting, no lesser of two evil voting. During the course of our work, the Charter Review Committee spent a lot of effort trying to put forward recommendations to you that encouraged voter participation and encouraged more candidates to stand for office. A lot of the things we did in the section that deals with election had as their predicate trying to get more people to vote and to get more candidates to run. So ranked choice voting is considered to encourage more candidates to run without fear of vote splitting, and therefore thereby generating greater voter participation. Now I might point out that all 5 of these points that we focused on during the course of our work were given considerable anecdotal support among the municipalities that have used ranked choice voting. This next one, point 4, is one that we felt to be quite important, and that's ranked choice voting is deemed to curb negative campaigning because it operates in the effect of asking a candidate asks supporters to vote for her due to her attributes, not to any perceived deficiencies in the opposition. And again, there is considerable anecdotal testimony to support the fact that people who run for office in ranked choice voting jurisdictions are much more positive. And I can say that I lived in Cambridge for a number of years and voted according to ranked choice voting in many occasions. And I do believe that that is the case. You're asking people to vote for you. You're not asking the electorate to vote against my opponent. Finally, and also, of importance to Northampton is that when ranked choice voting is used to elect candidates, there's no need for primaries. When you don't have primaries, you have two benefits. One is direct, you save money. And then another benefit that folks point to when you don't have to hold primaries is that it strengthens party unity, because you're not beating each other up to get to the general election. You stand on the merits, you stand during the general election, and again, there is no need for a primary. So yeah, again, I thank you for the opportunity to refresh my memory on why it is that ranked choice voting was so compelling during our deliberations. I certainly hope that the ballot question 2 passes this November. And then I hope we join East Hampton and Amherst in initiating it locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. That was very helpful. Are there questions or comments? Councillor Dwight.
Bob was comprehensive, as I fully expect him to be. I would also point out that in the absence of primaries, you reduce the phenomenon known as voting fatigue, which is kind of a shameful thing, but the fact it does occur. And also in the course of primaries, as we discovered now in this primary, most of our elections are almost decided by the primary. There's not a lot of participation. There's not a lot of engagement by potential candidates. You often hear people argue about instituting term limits because incumbents always enjoy the benefit of staying in office, provided they don't get arrested, and in some cases, until they want to leave, and that people call for term limits. And I've always said elections are term limits. However, in the case of the ranked choice voting, there would be, as Bob pointed out, there would be more of an incentive, or rather less of a disincentive, for people to consider running for office and giving us more opportunities. And the benefit of that, when you have contested races or people all vying for the same position, is you have a much broader and engaged conversation about the issues. Now, I mean, I alluded to this before when we were talking to Pam Powers, the clerk, that, you know, the phenomenal turnout for the primary is very encouraging, and I'm expecting an even more phenomenal turnout for the general election. But it always kind of saddens me that locally, our election turnouts for local positions is, well, I'm going to say, is dismally low when you compare it with that. That indicates that there's a sense of disconnect or a complacency that shouldn't exist, because we certainly know, as we participate in these meetings, people are hardly complacent about virtually anything now. And you would like to see that same energy and passion and devotion translate into elections, in the way the elections and the results of those elections. I really believe that ranked choice voting actually would give us an opportunity to look at elections in all new ways and experience elections in new ways. I mean, just the simple fact alone that if it reduces by even 1/8 the amount of negative campaigning, it would be so refreshing. And as Bob pointed out, essentially there was unanimity in this conversation. I remember people asking questions. I don't ever remember anyone actually coming out in opposition to this. So just an amen to Bob. And I think that the upsides, so far we haven't identified the downsides, but the upsides trump everything. And excuse my use of that term.
Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Councillor Dwight, for touching on some of the issues I was going to speak of the issue of that, you know, if it increases the likelihood that you will choose to run, because as a candidate, you're not worried about spoiling the race for others and possibly, you know, having someone win that you wouldn't want to win. So I think it'll increase participation that way. I had a question about bullet voting, which I had to look up. So that, as I understand it, is where a person only votes for one, even when they can vote for more than one. So in the case of our at-large positions, and I noted that the state question says it will not apply to positions where you vote for more than one person. So in our case, we are talking about using a ranked choice method for when you vote for more than one person, correct?
Well, this is where we end up, this is their recommendation, but we need to craft the language. So I think we can make that determination. Councilor Dwight.
This had come up, and actually I ought to once again defer to Bob on this issue. The issue of bullet voting. Essentially, yes, it somewhat discourages bullet voting in the respect that you're basically squandering your level of influence. And in fact, actually, this did come up. We had a rather healthy conversation about it. And Bob, would you feel more comfortable speaking to it than I think you could present it better than I could.
Well, when you have an opportunity to express your feeling, you're encouraged to do so. And absent ranked choice voting, and I used to bullet vote all the time. If there's someone I want to get in, but I'm not entirely sure that she will get enough votes, I will just vote for her and not vote for the other person, thereby diminishing the votes that the other person gets. In ranked choice voting, you don't have to be that way. You could say, I want her to be number one and I want him to be number two. And as the algorithm works its way through among the candidates for those two positions, let's say, it's only the ones that get a majority of votes who are deemed elected. So in a situation where you have an opportunity to express your choice all the way through, it's really my personal interest as a citizen to say, this is who I want, this is who I want second. And the possibility of getting them both is there.
Councilor Labarge.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, for explaining that. You did a great job on that. Thank you.
Well.
Okay, other questions? Councilor Quinlan.
Is there a recommendation in terms of how many? I mean, if there were 8 people on the ballot, like in Mass 4, would you vote 1 through 8? I'm curious about that. You've mentioned a couple of times voting 1 and 2, but would you continue to rank people down the ballot?
Yes. Yes.
8, for instance?
If you wanted to, yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mayor Narkowitz, you look like you're thinking about saying something. Were you?
Yeah, I appreciated Bob's explanation. I was just going to say the other practical disincentive against bullet voting is basically if you only vote once, if you only rank one voter or choose one person, then basically your ballot doesn't count if it goes to a second round. I mean, so you're basically disenfranchising yourself. So you have to weigh the fact that, I'm being strategic, but I'm also I'm out of the game after the first count. Because if somebody doesn't secure 50%, then basically by not selecting a second or third or fourth choice, you've sort of disenfranchised yourself. So that's the other, principle, counteraction to bullet voting. So I think I probably said the same thing, but just that's just sort of the way it struck me. Although some people have argued that that's, one of the bad things about it, but you're not forced to bullet vote. I mean, I guess if you feel super strong about only one candidate, then you can certainly do that, but you may not be part of the decision making if that candidate, gets less, gets 22%. If you're like supporting the the CD4 candidate in prime in the 4th district. So yeah, that was all.
Yeah. Stan, did you have your hand up? Yeah, hold on, there you go.
Yes, just to amplify that and to answer Councilor Quinlan's question, there's nothing, at least in the state ballot question, that requires a voter to rank all the candidates. If there are 8 candidates, you could stop at number 6, for example. But as the mayor just pointed out, if you don't rank them all, then you run the danger of disenfranchising yourself if there are that many rounds of computing votes. So it's flexible in that sense.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Solicitor Seawald, could you come back for a second? Maybe more than a second.
Hello.
Hello. So, and I'm going to unmute Mayor Narkowitz too. So how do we proceed at this point? So what do you need from us to then be able to craft the language? So we need to vote on whether we accept the recommendation, and then what more do you need from us?
I would suggest, excuse me, I would suggest that that there be a vote generally to accept ranked choice voting, and then we can bring language back. We can discuss among the 3 of us what we'd like to see in there, and then bring it back to the council. If you have a process that you would like to engage internally with the council, that's another possibility. But I didn't really start even thinking about drafting this because I didn't know whether it was going to be, acted on affirmatively, and I would have wasted time creating a draft. And that's why I didn't do draft things that aren't in the charter already. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Well, since we are here and convened in public, then I guess what I would like us to do is sort of for the council to weigh in, what they would like to see in this, so that we can vote on it, and then and we'll confer with the mayor, and then we will tell you, so that way, the council doesn't need a separate meeting to figure out what we wanted to say. Since we're talking about it now, let's figure it out.
Okay.
Does that work? Okay. Councilor Dwight?
I would like to move that the council approve this section of the recommendations as written.
As written in the
recommendations. So as the recommendations that came from the committee,
right,
we're approving they have sent to us a recommendation, and the language that is being proposed by them to establish ranked choice voting, that we approve their recommendation. That would in turn, well, actually, I'm sorry, now I'm deliberating, so I'm a little careful. I want to be a little careful about that, but I just, so.
Okay, don't deliberate, but show me that language.
Okay, hang on a second.
Because am I right that there's not language for this? There's sort of the recommendation.
The general, yes.
It's not, it doesn't really stipulate anything other than the concept.
Exactly. That's, I mean, and, I think, what I heard the solicitor saying is, the specificity will hammer out, the structural appeal that we're making to the legislature on the home rule petition. But right now, I would like to move approval of the recommendation that we accept or that we request to employ ranked choice voting in the city of Northampton in the home rule petition.
Before there's a sec, I just want to, so I think my understanding of what the solicitor said is that we could hammer this out after, but it would be the mayor and myself and the solicitor. So I would like the council to do some hammering now so that we know what the council would like, and that way that can be used to inform what the solicitor does. I think, there's some questions here that we
Right.
want to maybe say, we know that we want these aspects of it in here. So that's the work
Well,
that I would like to be done tonight, if possible.
Okay, it's a little tricky insofar as you notice, for instance, on the ballot initiative, it's been pointed out on multiple member bodies that this won't apply. However, that's what the city, at least that's the recommendation here from the review committee. So it'll be slightly different from that. So there are various flavors of this. And then of course, if we want to be, I don't know how granular we want to get, because we can describe the entire structure of ranked choice voting and how it will be applied and how, how it'll be realized once it's approved, or we can just simply approve the process and concept of ranked choice voting or some variation in between that, something that's not so granular, but something that's a little more vague. I don't know. I mean, because I don't know how, beyond saying that we approve the recommendation that's been forwarded to us and request as part of the home rule petition, the opportunity to implement ranked choice voting in our municipal elections. I don't know what else we would hammer out from that. I don't know how much nuance you want there.
All right, so we still don't have, let's get a second on the recommendation, and then let's go into this a little bit more.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, so seconded by Councilor Thorpe. Okay. I saw Councilor Jarrett.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the example of what I brought up, which was, will it apply to positions where you vote for more than one person? So that sort of detail would be something I think we should figure out now. And I don't know if now at that point we have to propose an amendment to what you just said, or how that would work.
Thank you. That's exactly the example that I was about to give about, the level of granularity I think we should get to. I don't think we need to explain the concept. I think, there's certainly models that we could use to craft that language for explaining the concept, but sort of how we wanted to apply to Northampton more generally. Okay. So Mayor Narkowitz, I'm mindful that we are so we're meant to be doing this with you. So, I don't want to assume, but it seems like you would agree with the concept, like the general concept and the recommendation.
Yeah. And, considering I just had an editorial in, the Mass Live supporting ranked choice voting, yeah, I think it's fairly, can be confident that I
away.
So yeah, I think it really comes down to having the solicitor attempt to adapt a ranked choice voting model to fit our current, electoral makeup, with the at-large and the ward models, which again, I don't think is uncommon. It happens. Right. And so he'll just have to adapt language to fit that. And there's probably other examples of it out there. So I'm pretty comfortable that, that he would be able to come up with something and then you could bring it back to the actual language, and then the council could vote on it and, and discuss it. And, if there's issues or amendments or things like that, that's fine. So I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, great.
That's like the one that I can think of, which I don't know how communities deal with that. It may be that you have to separate the positions and have that you're not just voting for two positions, you're voting for two distinct positions, as opposed to, the two top vote getters. And, that may be the way they handle it. I don't know. Certainly there's a way with ranked choice voting, to select the first and second candidates. That's certainly easy enough. I just don't know about the 50% threshold and how that would work, because you could theoretically have a situation where only one candidate got 50%, and then what would you do? If a second at-large counselor didn't achieve, got 49%, then what would happen? So that we just have to work out some of those details. But but I understand the concern that Councilor Jarrett raised, but I think it's not insurmountable. So
Okay.
but I don't know that we can solve it tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else or any other concerns or things that would apply to Northampton? And maybe Bob, you have some thoughts on this that we should just discuss before we sort of send the solicitor off to craft this language, just so that he has, sort of our will and desire in there as fully, and we don't have to do a lot of work after it comes back.
I think Alan's prepared to do that, as long as you're going to stick with the district structure that you have now, and you're going to stick with the same number of at-large that you have now. Something can be crafted for that particular model. It would be only if you envisioned changes that something creative would have to be done.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking, there's also now the Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School superintendents, right? We have a few multiple bodies that have multiple people that get elected, or the Forbes Library trustees, things like that. Councilor Jarrett, did I see your hand?
Yeah, but I was going to make the same point you just did, that we have ones that are more than two. But I guess I would just ask the council, are there any positions that we see that we think should not be part of this? Or we're talking about every elected position, a municipal elected position?
Councilor Dwight?
Right now, I don't actually see where that would be advantageous. I think essentially, I think the most simple and direct structure that we employ and engage without exceptions, and we already deal with a number of exceptions, and not only in elections but everything in Northampton, because it evolved like our roads, like goats. But in this case, I think structurally all elections for individuals, for offices, would be covered under ranked choice voting. And if we made an exception, it would, I think, do more harm than good. It would complicate it. And mind you, there's one of the things about ranked choice voting is the learning curve. There's going to have to be a learning curve, and every time you have change, as we've witnessed in a number of other ways, and any type of change manifests in some resistance, confusion, or frustration. And I think the most elemental, simple form that we can present when we talk about ranked choice voting, and once people become adjusted to it after probably initial resistance to it in some respect, I think it will actually become, the benefits will become very evident, and the ease by which it can be employed will be surprising for a number of people. So I don't want to muddy the waters any further than, we've already got a heavy lift, and we have to try and educate people on how to, on the voting structure that potentially could change in a significant fashion, at least the way they're used to. So that's it. I've said that about 6 times, so I'll stay away from saying the 7th.
Okay. Solicitor Seawold?
I would caution that if you are going to exempt any positions, you might run into needing a primary, and we're going to eliminate the primary. So I think that would be difficult.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but Clerk Powers, is there anything you want to share or add, or have any thoughts about educating the public, or what this process would be like? Are you still here? All right, maybe I was putting her on the spot. Pam, are you here still? Okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts before we vote on this and hand it over to the solicitor? Councilor Foster.
Just a minor one, but the question that Councilor Jarrett asked of should we consider exempting any positions is one I was really thinking of, and Solicitor Seawald, thank you for your opinion on that. And I agree that it makes sense that it would be across the board, that it would be something for any elected position would fall into the same voting structure, and that makes sense as far as educating the public in a election that is going to reduce as much confusion as possible.
Okay, any other comments, questions? If not, then Laura, roll call please on accepting this recommendation.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Councilor Labarge, I'm not sure we heard you.
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
and Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, we've accepted the recommendation. The next one is the recommendation to extend voting rights in municipal elections to non-citizens. I'm gonna read this summary paragraph and then I'll ask for a motion to discuss it. So the committee endorsed this recommendation after favorable testimony by 15 speakers at the October 29th public forum. The committee believes that this is consistent with the city's commitment to equity, fostering an open and welcoming community, embracing diversity, and promoting a sense of inclusion for all. Okay. We have a motion on accepting this recommendation to extend voting rights in municipal elections to non-citizens.
Second. Oh,
Where's the first?
I'm sorry.
You're the first.
Move to accept this. Extending
Second.
voting rights. Yeah, thank you.
Motion's been made by Councilor Maori, seconded by Councilor Dwight. Stan.
Thank you. This is a time, I believe, when it's important as a community that we go beyond making aspirational statements reflecting our values and take decisive action that demonstrates Northampton's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusivity. Extending voting rights to non-citizens helps to achieve that goal and is consistent with other recommendations by the Charter Review Committee to expand the electorate. The proposal to allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections reflects voices in the community heard by the Charter Review Committee. During a public hearing last October 29th, at least 15 people, including some who lived here while undocumented, described the frustration and disenfranchisement they felt because they were not allowed to vote for local officials who make decisions affecting their lives. As tax-paying contributors to the community, they asked to be allowed to vote on issues that decide how that money is spent. Those people who spoke so eloquently and moved the committee to vote unanimously in favor of this recommendation are friends, neighbors, co-workers, and colleagues, but they lack the voting rights that the rest of us enjoy. While it remains illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal and state elections, federal law gives states the right to decide whether non-citizens may vote in local elections if requested by a municipality. So far, non-citizens are allowed to vote in some local elections in at least 11 states, but not Massachusetts. With a vote tonight approving this recommendation, the City Council can take the first step toward making Northampton another groundbreaking community in Massachusetts, while also making a powerful statement expressing support for all people living and working in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Questions and comments from the council. Councilor Nash.
So I have a question as to why we're using the word non-citizens as opposed to saying all residents can vote. And I just look at the all residents can vote as more inclusive, and but I'm sure you guys have thought through this, and I'd love to hear your reasoning.
Councillor Dwight or Stan, did you want to?
I'll defer to Stan.
I think that we're specifically identifying a class of residents that, and I think the only class of residents that are not given the right to vote in municipal elections. But I'll ask either Bill or the city solicitor to add to that.
Bill,
Yeah, I would say that I appreciate the distinction that Councilor Nash is making. And in fact, actually what he's suggesting is something that is more of a positive as opposed to identifying a distinct class. But we're talking about a class that is disenfranchised currently. And to identify them clearly, how people interpret what residency means is the crux of the whole argument. You will hear people say in a bigoted fashion that people who are not documented don't qualify as residents. They're illegals, you'll hear the term, which I think it's incumbent upon us to be very clear and succinct about what it is we're asking for. The enfranchisement of people currently disallowed from participating in their governance while at the same time living within our communities. So this distinguishes itself in some respect from the next issue that we'll talk at another meeting about expanding their voting rights to citizens, residents under the age of 18. But I think I think we need to be very clear what it is we're asking for when we petition for this, because as Stan so he nailed it, as he so eloquently put it, that we are saying we're trying to assert our rights to allow people that we feel are part of our community that are not being incorporated in our process and joining us in at least the very elemental right of determining their governance and how they will be governed, that we are making a loud declarative statement. And so once again, I do appreciate your distinction. It is actually important, and it makes me wince when we say non-citizen. I think that's, again, citizens, another interpretive thing, and it's a fight we've been having all along when it comes down to who's allowed to be a citizen downtown, whose vote counts more than others. You'll hear people say, I'm a taxpayer, therefore you should, the ellipses, you should pay more attention to me. We don't, everyone's vote is not predicated on what they own, what they possess, who they are, who they worship, who they don't worship, where they came from. And if we're going to subscribe to that very, very simple right, then I think that we should declare that very clearly without hesitation here in our charter. And hopefully it will be realized and we'll have an opportunity to enjoy that participation.
Thank you. Okay, Solicitor Seawald.
Thank you. I don't want to get too legalistic about this, but this is not based on residence. A person can have many residences. People can have houses all over the place and be residences of many different places. The question is, where are you a domiciliary? Your domicile is where you make your home and where your civic and social connections are. And so we already have a law that says all domiciliaries over the age of 18 are eligible to vote. So just repeating that wouldn't effectuate what we're trying to effectuate, which is to bring in a class of people who are not considered domiciliaries for the purpose of registering to vote. So we need to be very specific about who we're talking about, as opposed to just generally and ambiguously including them in a general class.
Thank you. Councillor Nash.
Well, I want to thank you for the explanations here, both the aspirational and the technical. I suspected that it had been well thought out, and it was, so thank you.
Other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Maori and then Councillor Foster and then Councillor Labarge.
Right. I just wanted to say that I remember that evening at the Charter Review Committee when we were discussing this very clearly, and it was quite moving. And we had a lot of great testimony. I think there was one or two that night or another night against it, and that was very illuminating too, to see what were the barriers for some people. And I think really, it's, if we're not afraid of true democracy, then I don't think we should be afraid of including all of our domiciliary, all residents, non-citizens included. And I just wanted to say that the state does, in fact, just clarify, the state does have the right to give non-citizens the right to vote. It's actually been done before in our history in a much bigger way in the San Francisco area. So yes, I think this is a great move if we are looking to have true representative democracy in our city. I also just want to say that there are residents who can't vote if they are currently incarcerated. So just to keep that in mind, that there are a few who still cannot vote, and I'm hoping that as we take on initiatives like this, we will achieve a much bigger bandwidth of all of our residents being represented.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Foster.
Councillor Maori very eloquently said basically what I was thinking. I was at that hearing in October, and I want to thank the Charter Review Commission for all of their hard work, for hosting that hearing, for giving so much space and approaching this question, with an open mind. And I can think of no better statement of community than expanding who gets to be a part of how our community is run and who gets a say in who their representatives are. There's a lot I love about the Charter Review recommendations. I, have read this many times and I'm pretty excited about it. And this is one of my very favorite points. And I wholeheartedly support expanding the voices in our local government. And I'm really excited to support this tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Labarge.
Yes, I want to echo what Councillor Karen Foster just talked about and Councillor Rachel Mayor. I was there that evening also and hearing the testimony of the 15 residents that came in. And I feel that they should have their rights. Northampton, we look at equity for everybody. So this is where I'm at with that. I will support this 100%. And I think the Charter Commission did an excellent job on their language of their rights, of what and the rights that they should have to vote, no matter being a non-citizen or not.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Jarrett.
Yes, I would also echo and express my support for it. And Claire, that I have met many people who are here legally or are documented and people who are not, and this would apply to both. And that, that's we want, if you're a local person, you should have local power. And there's one question and concern that some have brought up, I think maybe at that October meeting, that there would be a risk, but I believe there isn't a risk in terms of if we put this as part of our proposal, that the state legislature can decline a piece of our charter proposal and uphold the rest, that we won't have to then come back and figure it out again. Is that correct?
Stan.
Yes, that's correct. It's not an all or nothing vote by the state legislature on whatever goes to the legislature as a home rule petition. Particular pieces of it could be turned down.
Solicitor Seawald.
Actually, when this is in final form to go to the legislature, the city council will vote to authorize the city council to approve some, but not all, i.e. to make amendments to the proposed legislation or not. So that's going to be a question for the council to decide. The other possibility is sending in the more controversial proposed amendments separately. As separate legislation.
Order, okay.
And that way you, as to the rest of the proposed amendments, you retain your control over those amendments while not risking everything being, you retain control by not allowing the legislature to change what we've done except as to form. And then separate those that are more controversial and that might cause the whole ship to sink. So there are some strategic moves to be made in the future in this regard.
Thank you for that. Other comments? Mayor Narkowitz, I'm going to check in with you now. And your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm supportive. I think I actually took a pledge on the steps of the city hall for a number of different things, and this was one of the items. So I'm supportive. It'll just be again the language, working out the language. Some communities have done, I know Amherst, for example, has done this many years ago. I think possibly City Solicitor Seawald wrote it when he was town council. Although it applies to people that are legal aliens, doesn't go as far as undocumented. So I guess it'll just be the language, and I do think the strategy piece will be important because we obviously wouldn't want it to, if we wouldn't want it to potentially sink the more sort of less controversial, just housekeeping items of the charter. So I think we'd want to be careful about how we frame that. In terms of how we frame what we're allowing, as the solicitor said, whether we're going to allow changes as to form or form and substance. So I think that'll be a major discussion point for each of these things.
Okay. All right, other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none. Roll call, please, Laura, on accepting this recommendation to extend voting rights in municipal elections to non-citizens.
Shara.
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Councillor Dwight.
Yes.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
And Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the members of the Charter Review Committee who were here tonight. Thank you so much. Both of you gave really beautiful and very helpful explanations. So thank you so much for being with us. And I promise we will pick up the rest of these, and it will be sooner than 6 months, barring, I'm just not gonna say anymore because we know what happened last time. So thank you so much for being here. Hold on. Okay, so we are gonna now recess for finance. Oh, sorry, Counselor Quinlan.
Can we recess?
Recess,
Recess to
recess,
recess.
recess to recess to recess. Yes, okay. Yeah, that would be great, actually. Thank you. Well, 7 minutes, 7-minute recess. Thank you. Thank you.
Parade of animals going back and forth.
Okay. We are back from recess and we are going to recess for finance. Laura, when you are ready, could you please call the roll of finance?
Sure. Councillor Labarge.
Oh. Councillor Labarge, you're muted. Did people lose their co-hosting status? I don't think so.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Present.
Okay. Councillor Quinlan.
Here.
Councillor Shara.
Here.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Here.
Okay. Our first item is financial order. This is 20.118 in order to appropriate $54,075 in CPA funds for West Farms Road APR project. I'm going to read it. In City Council, September 17, 2020, upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, ordered that whereas the Northampton Conservation and Agricultural Commissions and the Office of Planning and Sustainability submitted a Community Preservation Act application for protection of 36.1 acres at the Hickory Dell Farm on West Farms Road within the Mineral Hills Greenway with a permanent agricultural preservation restriction. Whereas the project meets the goals of the Sustainable Northampton Plan, Northampton Community Preservation Plan, and Open Space, Recreation, and Multi-Use Trail Plan to protect open space and agricultural land in active production and protect heritage landscapes. Whereas CPA funds will provide the required local match for $559,550 in Massachusetts dollars in Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resource Funds. Whereas on November 20th, 2019, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $54,075 in the new Community Preservation Act funds be used to support this project, in addition to the $21,375 funds on hand from previously appropriated CPA funds. Order that $54,075 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Act funding to the Office of Planning and Sustainability for West Farms Road Agricultural Preservation Restriction Project, and that the grantee meets the conditions approved by the Community Preservation Committee, the Mayor, and the City Council. Specifically, $54,075 is appropriated from the CPA Open Space Reserve account. Further, that the city, acting through its Conservation Commission, is authorized to purchase or otherwise acquire for conservation, agriculture, and passive recreation purposes, as provided by Section 8C of Chapter 40 of the General Laws, the Community Preservation Act, and Article 97 of the Amendments to the Massachusetts Constitution, the above described agricultural preservation restriction as defined in Section 31 of Chapter 184 of the General Laws, and that the City Council hereby approves such restrictions. Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Labarge and seconded by Councilor Thorpe. And is Sarah LaValle here? We can't see all the people right now. There she is. Hi, Sarah. Hi, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, good. How are you? Thank you.
Good to see you. Would you like to talk to us about this?
Sure, absolutely. So this recommendation was voted on unanimously last fall by the Community Preservation Committee. So it's coming to it at sort of an odd time. You usually see these twice a year, but this is a little bit outside that structure. And that was deferred until fiscal year 2021 so that there would be sufficient funding available. The project will create an agricultural preservation restriction on the Hickory Dell Farm in the West Farm section of the city. The farmland will remain privately owned under this structure, but the state and the city will jointly purchase an agricultural preservation restriction. So that means that the property can never be developed, and every property owner moving forward will have an obligation to keep it in farmland. The overall acquisition includes 36.1 acres of prime farmland, which is also prime development land. That's why the value is so high, because it is also prime development land. And what's great for the city is $559,550 will come from the Commonwealth, mostly using federal funds. And the state also covers half of the survey costs and title exam. So a $75,450 match total, which is about 12% of the purchase price is required from the city. And of this, we have 21,375 already on hand. So that's why that's called out in the council order. So this request and appropriations for the remaining $54,075. And in addition, the owners are also donating a restriction on an additional 9 acres at no cost. That wasn't prime farmland, so that's just a straight donation to the city, plus an additional half the survey cost. So in total, this means the city shares about 10% of the total cost of the deal. So for that, we'll be able to protect farming, a historic landscape, and the rural look of West Farms Road. And the property also abuts existing protected land within the Mineral Hills Greenway. So it's just a great project all around.
Thank you. Councilor Labarge.
Yes, I'm going to support this 100%. The Omasta family, this is going on from generation to generation. John and Faye Omasta and her son and the family previously. The father had passed away, lived in Ward 6 also. They have been farming forever. And I remember going to the planning board with Faye and John way back, where she wanted to go ahead and build a store there. And she told the planning board, because she was afraid if she wasn't going to get a permit or not. And she said to the planning board, you know, it's looking better and better every time. What she meant was that contractors, builders were approaching them way back to buy property and put development in there. And they made that decision in the planning board that they got approved to go ahead and put up that store. And believe me, in Ward 6, that was our favorite store there. We had artists that came in and it was just unbelievable there. And they were like family to everybody in Ward 6 or even out in the community. I have to say, at this 36 something acres, which is absolutely beautiful land, beautiful. And they are giving up a lot here, a lot. And you look at it, there's actually 2 payments here. We have a total of $635,000 that is from the Commonwealth, and that goes to the Omastas, and then also giving up that much value of their 39 acres. You know, and they're giving it up for not selling it for development. And that means a lot to all of us in the community and also in Ward 6. And I'm just so happy about this. They deserve this because they've given up a lot in their lives, and they're giving back to us and they're giving back to the community. And hopefully someday, I'm hoping that just like on Spring Street with the farming going on over there, we could look at that store on that property because it's not being used anymore for educational purposes for farmers and so forth, and be able to work out in the fields and that. It's something that I'm really going to be looking at, and I'm supporting this. And there's no question about it because of the family, what they've done. Even the 350th that we had a huge celebration. The whole community was welcome to come with that. We were busy all day. They have just done so much, the Omasta family. So I'm very happy about this. Thank you.
Thank you for that background. Other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, roll call on a positive recommendation, please.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
and Councilor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that moves forward with a positive recommendation. Next is 20.11. Thank you, Sarah. Next is 20.119, in order for FY 2021 budget transfers. This is upon the recommendation of the mayor, ordered that the following budgetary transfers be made from the general liability insurance, OM, property and casualty, 50,980 transferred to General liability insurance, public officials, 30,947 transferred to there. And coming from workers' comp, PS workers' comp, $69,340, and also coming from workers' comp, police and fire accident, 12,587. So that's a total transferring from those two workers' comp, PS lines, 81,927. That amount going over to those two general liability insurance OM lines. Is there a motion?
Move to approve, please.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councillor Quinlan and seconded by Councillor Labarge. And I see Finance Director Wright.
Hi.
So
this is just a transfer. We budgeted the correct amount for all of our insurances overall, but once Maya applies the various credits, some of the amounts get shifted around. So we're basically just moving money from the workers' comp lines to the general liability lines, but the overall budget for insurance is staying the same.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, roll call, please, on a positive recommendation, Laura.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that moves forward with the positive recommendation. Next is 20.120, an order to authorize payment of a prior year bill. This is upon the recommendation of the mayor, ordered that the council authorize payment of a prior year bill FY20 from Human Resources for $7,287.84 for Medicare Part B refunds that were due in June of 2020.
Move for a positive recommendation.
Motion's been made by Councillor Quinlan.
Second.
Seconded. And Susan, did you want to speak to this also?
Sure. Twice a year, Human Resources reimburses a very finite group of former retired employees. There's about 14 now, and it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. This is a group of employees that have to pay a penalty for Medicare because they joined Medicare after age 65. This was back before the city required everyone to move into Medicare at age 65. So it's a small amount of money. We reimburse them every 6 months. This reimbursement was due in June, and it was just missed when we were processing things given the COVID situation and everything. So we just want to get this reimbursement out to these 14 employees.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this reimbursement? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
and Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Okay, that moves forward with a positive recommendation. Next is 20.122. Upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, in order to appropriate CPA funds for community preservation purposes. Ordered that the following amounts be appropriated or reserved from fiscal year 2021 Community Preservation Fund estimated revenues of $1,640,680, $1,390,407 FY21 local assessment estimate, plus $250,273 estimated state match for the fiscal year 2021 community preservation purposes. This is $180,475 from FY21 total estimated CPA revenue to the Community Preservation Fund Open Space Reserve. It's account 2344930359931. $180,475 from the FY21 total estimated CPA revenue to the Community Preservation Fund Historic Preservation Reserve. $180,475 from FY21 total estimated CPA revenue to the Community Preservation Fund Affordable Housing Reserve. $75,000 from FY21 total estimated CPA revenue to the Community Preservation Fund Administrative Account. and $1,024,255 from FY21 total estimated CPA revenue to the Community Preservation Fund budget reserve. Also, the following amounts be appropriated from the Community Preservation Fund budget reserve for FY21 community preservation bonding repayment purposes. That's $60,000 for principal and $7,875 for interest for the Bean Farm bond, $90,000 for principal and $18,900 for interest for Florence Fields bond, $265,000 for principal and $7,950 for interest for Pulaski Park 1 bond, $65,000 for principal and $15,400 for interest for Pulaski Park 2 bond. Motion, please.
I would move to put this with a positive recommendation, put forward with a positive recommendation.
Motion's been made.
Second it.
And seconded by Councilor Labarge. Excellent. And Sarah LaValle is back.
All right, so a lot of numbers here, but the gist of this order is to take all of the estimated revenue for the Community Preservation Act and put it into the proper accounts to allow it to be utilized for projects like the one that moved forward earlier.
And this happens once a year?
It does. Once every fiscal year in the fall. It has to happen before the tax rate is set, which will be coming up later this year.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
and Councillor Shara.
Yes. Okay, that goes forward with the positive recommendation. Next is 20.123, in order to appropriate $25,000 for the Northampton Policing Review Commission staff support. This is upon the recommendation of the mayor. It's ordered that the sum of $25,000 be raised and appropriated in the FY 2021 budget and added to the City Council salary line item PS Technical Professional for part-time staff support to the Northampton Policing Review Commission.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Labarge and seconded by Councilor Thorpe. Mayor Narkowitz, would you like to talk about this?
Certainly. This reflects the commitment that was made as part of the formation of the Northampton Policing Review Commission. One of the pieces of that proposal that the council voted on is that the mayor would bring forward an appropriation order to provide funding to support the work and staff support for the commission. So in speaking with the council president and the finance director, we determined that this would be an appropriate amount of funds to start with to be able to provide for sort of a temporary part-time staff person that would work as support staff for that new commission. The commission is going to be meeting for its first organizational meeting next week. And I think one of the items that's on their proposed agenda is this discussion around the staffing and how to proceed there. So this is, fulfilling my commitment to bring forward this funding to make it available when the decisions are made around hiring staff.
Thank you. And so just it's under the city council, it's in the city council's budget, but just to be clear, this isn't being staffed by, say, Laura. This is just where it's going to be sort of held and housed, is in the city council budget. Councilor Labarge.
So this is coming out of our city council budget?
It's going into our city council budget and then will be coming out of our city council budget.
Thank you.
It's not, we don't have a budget for something like this. So this appropriation is moving this money in for this purpose.
Was it coming out of the general fund and then brought into ours?
So we're basically appropriating an additional $25,000, raising and appropriating an additional $25,000 of general fund operating monies to pay for this, which we are allowed to do up until the point that we set our tax rate, which is not until later this year. Because it's staff and because it's, unlike an emergency capital expense or something like that, because it's staff and has to be paid for out of a PS line item in a budget. That's why we're approaching it this way.
Thank you.
Other, Councillor Jarrett, you thinking about it? Yes. He's committed. Okay.
There we go. Okay, so I'm just trying to understand what this will mean for the tax rate that we eventually set. I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, but due to the cuts we enacted in June, we're taking less from the fiscal stabilization fund. And so I assume, we would want to we're trying to maintain the tax rate when we set it at a 2.5% increase from fiscal year 20. And my question is, does raised and appropriated mean that we will be seeing greater than a 2.5% increase from fiscal year 20, basically sort of moving into the authorization that the Proposition 2.5 gave? Or am I not getting this right at all? So just appreciate some clarification there.
Yeah, no, we're not proposing to exceed that and not proposing to exceed the delay in the override that passed. I may want to defer to Susan Wright on this question in terms of the best way to explain it, but no, I am not proposing that we exceed the normal increase and not proposing that these funds come from some other source. It may, in fact, and we've been talking about it for a while. We've said that depending on where we are when we get to the point where we set the tax rate, we may have to come back. We may have to adjust the budget later in FY 2021 because of the fact that we're still looking at our. We made some predictions around what we thought revenue would be. But we don't really know, we didn't know at the time how long COVID would last. We didn't know what the long-term economic effects were. So we fully reserve the right that we may have to come back at some point and use the fiscal stability fund to do that. But in terms of this $25,000 on an almost $100 million budget, we think that we'll be able to fit it in within the tax rate setting process. But let me turn it over to Susan Wright.
Yes, the budget, the city council always votes the budget in June, but technically the budget isn't finalized until we set the tax rate. And the piece of the budget that still is in flux after you voted in June is the revenue side of the picture. You don't vote the revenues. What we have to do is come up with a budget that's within the levy limit, and we balance the revenues to match the budget that you have passed. So by raising and appropriating another $25,000, things are going to move around a lot between now and when we set the tax rate in November. As the mayor said, we're still waiting for some numbers to give us some guidance about what we might see for revenues. So in the end, when we go to set the budget and when we see what we're definitely getting for state aid, we may be coming back to council and saying, okay, instead of the $75,000 that we were going to take from the fiscal stability fund, we may need $175,000 to balance the budget. We may lower our revenue estimates. We may raise our revenue estimates. So there's a lot in flux right now. But as the mayor said, doing this because we're paying a person, we're paying them as an employee, we're paying them out of a salary line item. We need to have them in a line item in the budget. So that they can be paid and so that they can be part of a department so someone can approve their payroll, et cetera. So that's why we're doing this way. But I just want to let you know the budget really doesn't get settled until you vote on the factor for the tax rate, and then we submit the recap to the state to prove how we've balanced our budget. So there's a lot more that is going to happen between now and when the budget is finalized.
Thank you both for that clarification.
Other, Councillor Quinlan.
Yeah, I mean, I just, as a named member of the Policing Review Commission, I just want to thank the mayor for living up to that commitment to provide these resources. I'm looking forward to the commission having the chance to succeed, and I appreciate the support. Thank you.
I second that. Other questions or comments or thumbs? Okay. All right. Roll call, please, on a positive recommendation on this appropriation, please, Laura.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
and Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that moves forward. And the last item is 20.124, an order authorizing acquisition of drainage easement on the east side of North Farms Road. There are a lot of documents here. Okay, here's the order. Upon the recommendation of Mayor David J. Narkowitz and Department of Public Works. And this is 20.124. An order authorizing acquisition of drainage easement on the east side of North Farms Road, whereas the city needs to upgrade, replace, and extend a drain pipe on the east side of North Farms Road, which outlets onto land of Robert J. Bollinger, parcel ID 07-042-001, and whereas the extended easement is shown on a plan of land entitled, quote, Drain Line Easement, North Farms Road, Bollinger's Field, Florence, MA, and quote, dated August 2020 by City of Northampton Department of Public Works. And whereas Robert J. Bollinger is willing to grant the city the extended easement and to release all claims for the taking of the easement for the consideration of $22,500. Now, therefore, be it ordered that the City Council hereby authorizes the acquisition by purchase, gift, eminent domain, and otherwise of easement interest in a portion of tax parcel ID 02-042-001 as shown on the above reference plan in order to access, install, realign, maintain, repair, and replace one or more drainage pipes and lines, stone pipe end, and associated infrastructure, and to enter and remain upon the easement area by foot and with vehicles and equipment for said purposes. No appropriation is needed as sufficient funds are available in the Drain Replacement Fund to pay $22,500 as consideration or damages for the acquisition authorized here under.
Move to put this forward with a positive recommendation.
Okay.
Motion's been made and seconded. Who shall speak to the drainage easement? Mayor Narkowitz.
Yes, so as counselors may know, the city and the DPW is in the process of a major reconstruction of North Farms Road at a price tag of just under $2 million. This is an existing drain pipe. There's an existing drain pipe in the vicinity of I think the address there is 211 North Farms Road, which is basically on the east side of the road, and it's in the middle of Mr. Bollinger's cornfield. There's currently a 12-inch drain pipe that runs underneath that field and then outlets into a wetland, and it needs to be upgraded to a 24-inch pipe to handle the amount of water. One of the things we often talk about when older roads begin to fall into disrepair, and this was true in some of the other big roads we fixed, is that undersized drainage utilities, and we know with increased development and as well as increased storms, frankly. So this is really an undersized drain pipe. It causes what they consider to sort of sheet flow and flooding because the drainage system can't handle the level of water coming off. The pipe itself that's there now has been in place. We can date it before 1961. There's some rough road plans that show a pipe in there since probably about 1910. So it's a pretty long-standing piece of infrastructure and important to the reconstruction project. And so the Director LaScalia and the DPW have been in conversations with Mr. Vollinger about this reconstruction project. And so essentially, there was not an existing easement on file that they could locate. And so out of an abundance of caution and to make sure that we're following, proper procedures and that we actually have an easement, a lawful easement going forward, we're proposing to purchase this easement. There's been an outside appraiser hired to determine the value of the easement, which is the $22,500. We've also worked very closely with Mr. Vollinger as part of this whole construction project to accommodate his corn planting and harvesting schedule so that the construction doesn't interfere with that in any way. And we're also going to be making all efforts to ensure that the topsoil is maintained. And then we'll be, once the new pipe is set, we'll be reseeding it with a special type of rye that Mr. Vollinger specified. So again, the funds already exist as part of the annual drain replacement funds that will pay for this. And it's a fairly critical, important piece of drainage infrastructure to the North Farms Road construction project. So I believe that Director LaScalia has asked if we could get 2 readings on this so that we can expedite it in line with the construction project, which is underway right now, so that it'll be in place in time for that project. So that's my sort of background on it. I know there's a map that's attached to the order of taking, which just kind of illustrates it. But it's I think a fairly straightforward easement of an existing piece of infrastructure on a piece of private property.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on this easement? Councilor Nash.
Yes, as the former chair of the TPC who met with residents out on North Farms 3 years ago, something like that, and working with Councilors Carney and Klein, that I'm really glad that this is moving forward. One of the big issues with the rebuild is the stormwater that builds up in this low point on the roadway. And that's where much of the deterioration has occurred. So the fact that we're taking this step to address this is really terrific. The other thing is that I just want to emphasize that I think the mayor called it, what was it, the pipe replacement program. This is funded by the stormwater fee. That when we're replacing roadways, especially in the more rural parts of town, we're relying on that fee to do improvements like this so that the roadway will stand up for much longer than this roadway originally lasted. So anyway, this I think it's great this is going forward, and we're doing a really thorough job on one of our major corridors. So thanks.
And then I would just only add, if I could, to what Councilor Nash said, and the advantage of having this dedicated fund is that it allows the actual paving dollars to go further, because in the past we would have been spending the pavement monies, Chapter 90 monies, to pay for drainage. And so now, by having this fund, we're able to spend those as well as the general fund dollars that we've been adding as part of capital improvements, to be dedicated to paving itself. And so it's allowed us to do more roads because we're able to deal with the drainage piece using stormwater utility.
Councilor Jarrett.
Thank you all. This seems like a great addition to the project. I was curious where the water goes after it's gone under the cornfield. It looks like it's in the Broad Brook watershed. And I was was just curious about the, the impact of having water that has treated salt as salt and such that then gets sent into the woods here, and then where it goes after that.
It's actually a wetland. It's an existing wetland. That's where the outfall ends now, and so it's going to be going into that same outfall. And we've, as part of building this structure, the DPW has gone through a full permitting process, related to wetlands. I don't know if, that would have been Sarah's department. I don't think she's here anymore, but they did have to go through a full permitting process. So all of those things were considered and reviewed as part of the overall permitting for the project. It's somewhat diffuse in terms of what the water does there. And so, yes, they've had to go through the full notice of intent and all the things that you would do if you're doing anything near a wetland. So they've gone through that process.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that is the last item on the finance agenda.
Move to adjourn finance, please.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councillor Quinlan, seconded by Councillor Thorpe to adjourn. Roll call on adjourning, please.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
and Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Okay, we are coming out of finance and back into the council meeting where we're going to pick up these financial orders. So these are financial orders on first reading. And we've got 20.118 in order to appropriate $54,075 in CPA funds for West Farms Road APR project.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Jarrett. Is there discussion? Councilor Maori.
Yeah, I just was curious. So I noticed on the map there's housing, there's houses there. Is there going to be development as separate lots at all, or are those properties currently occupied? I wasn't clear.
Hold on. Sarah has left, but Mariner.
So we're talking about which, I'm sorry, I have the wrong agenda up here. I gotta go back.
No, that's okay. Yeah, the West Farms map, it showed, the aerial map, it shows, I think, what, 2 or 3 structures. I was just wondering, are those private, are those currently occupied, and what's to become of them? I guess I'm wondering when.
Yes, that's I think the structures you're talking about I think we're referring to the store and the home, right, and the store that Councilor Labarge was talking about.
Yeah.
That's closest to the road, and then the other building is actually if you drive by it, it's like almost like a Quonset hut style, like a sort of a barn, an open air barn structure as well. So I'm assuming those would stay on the property. They're sort of cordoned off. I think they're just farm structures, which you're allowed to have on an APR land. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And so it won't be any lots cordoned off for development it's all going to be. Yeah,
that would be strictly prohibited.
Okay.
APR. That's the whole purpose of the APR, is to basically protect the land forever and maintain it as farmland. So that's essentially what we're buying. We're basically buying away the development rights and preserving it forever as farmland.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Labarge, are you raising your hand?
Yes, I just wanted to repeat what the mayor is saying, and also Councilor Rachel Mayor. It states it right on that order of them making it preservation forever. There's no building on that 30-something acres there. They're giving up a lot.
They are.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Sorry. Questions or comments? And my children? Not from my children, from any of you? Okay, Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes. Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes. Okay, that passes in first reading. Next is 20.119, in order for FY 2021 budget transfers.
Move to approve, please.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Thorpe. Any discussion on these budget transfers? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in first reading. 2 readings have been requested.
Suspend the rule.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to suspend rules. Any discussion on suspension? Seeing none, roll call on suspending rules, please.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, rules
Move
are
second reading, please.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for second reading. Any discussion on second reading? Roll call, please.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
and Counselor Foster.
Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Okay. That passes in 2 readings. Next up is 20.120, in order to authorize payment of a prior year bill.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Labarge and seconded by Counselor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Move
Move
to
to
suspend
suspend
rules
the
to allow
rules.
for a second reading.
Motion's been made and seconded to suspend rules. Any discussion on suspension of rules? Roll call, please, on suspension of rules.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Move second reading, please.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on second reading. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Maori.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in 2 readings. Next is 20.122, in order to appropriate FY 2021 CPA funds for community preservation purposes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Dwight. Any discussion on first reading? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in first reading. Next is 20.123, in order to appropriate $25,000 for Northampton Policing Review Commission staff support. This is first reading, 2 readings are requested.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Labarge and seconded by Counselor Dwight, I believe. Any discussion on first reading? Roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Quinlan.
Yes.
On the rule.
Move to suspend the rules.
Motion's
Second.
made and seconded to suspend rules. Any discussion on suspension of rules? Okay, roll call on suspension of rules.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes. Rules are suspended.
Move second reading, please.
And
Motion's been made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Labarge for second reading. Any discussion on second reading? Roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in 2 readings. Next is 20.124, an order authorizing acquisition of drainage easement on the east side of North Farms Road. This is first reading. 2 readings are requested to maintain adherence to DPW's tight construction schedule. So first reading, I need a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. First reading, any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Foster,
Counselor Foster.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. Yes.
there she is.
She said yes.
Have a yes, okay. Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Suspend the rule.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Thorpe to suspend rules. Any discussion? Roll call on suspension of rules.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
and Counselor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, rules are suspended.
Move second reading, please.
Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded by Counselor Quinlan. Any discussion on second reading? Roll call, please.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, that passes on second reading? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Next, we're on to financial orders on second reading. 20.111, in order to accept land and surplus it for affordable housing at Laurel Street and Burt's Pit Road.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motions been made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Dwight. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
I think this was previewed in first reading. I think the order may just need to be amended to add the citation for the bill that was passed or signed by the governor. It
Yes.
was
yes.
amended to change the language.
Yeah, I believe the governor was signing it like while we were meeting last time.
Yeah.
So we thank you. Okay, so the motion's on the floor, and what we need is an amendment. So if you open it, it's chapter amending it to the first line, whereas successive legislation, chapter 86 of the Acts of 1994, chapter 241 of the Acts of 2016, and chapter 169 of the Acts of 2020 is being inserted. So that's being House 4123 2020 awaiting the governor's signature. We will strike and add chapter 169 of the Acts of 2020.
I move that amendment.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded on amending that language. Any discussion on that amendment? Okay, roll call on the amendment.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
Councilor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councilor Dwight,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's moved as amended.
Okay. So
Is there a second on as amended?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion as amended? Roll call, please.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
Councilor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councilor Dwight,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
and Councilor Maori.
Yes.
Okay, that passes on second reading as amended. Thank you for catching that, Laura. Okay, orders 20.110, order to waive the city's right of first refusal under Mass General Law 61 for land on Turkey Hill Road. This is on second reading.
Move approval, please.
Second.
Motion's made by Councilor Dwight and seconded by Councilor Maori. Any discussion on second reading? Councilor Jarrett.
Thank you. I spoke with Director Fiden about this after our discussion the last meeting, and he explained that due to the cost of the lot and the extensive site work that would be needed to prepare it, it isn't feasible to use for affordable housing. So it was just good to clarify and understand how this works in terms of creating some middle market and affordable housing, which exists right in that area, and of course preserving a large amount of open space and then letting some of the lots go for market rate. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, Council Jarrett. It's good for me.
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Laura.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
Councilor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councilor Dwight,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
and Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Okay. That passes on two readings. Next this is ordinances that have not yet been referred. So this is 20.121, an ordinance to amend section 5.3 to reduce the setback from street lot lines for accessory stables for referral. Is there a motion to refer?
Move to refer to, has it gone to planning? Actually, it
Going
comes
there
from,
September 24th. Yeah.
okay. All
Oh,
right,
and I
so,
guess it does need to be formally referred, but. Although,
so that would be the referral. Yeah, it's
Oh.
queued up for there anyway. And then it wouldn't be able to go to any other committee until once that's vetted and processed through planning. But then, of course, it'll go to legislative matters. It's also entirely possible that it could come back to us modified and amended, that we would have to refer it back again. So, so that would be my recommendation anyway, to refer to planning.
Any legislative matters.
Yeah.
Second.
Was that Councilor Thorpe who seconded?
No.
Yeah, Quinlan.
Okay, so motion's been made and seconded to refer it to planning and then legislative matters. Any discussion on this referral? Okay, roll call please, Laura.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
and Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Okay, it is thus referred. Next, we're on to ordinances. So 20.014, an ordinance relative to parking on Bridge Street. This is the first reading. It has got a positive recommendation for transportation parking, and has had a long history. And
Can I request that we at least consider 20.014 and 20.015 together?
no, sorry.
Okay, just it was worth trying. Give it a shot.
Gave it a really good shot. You'll understand why in a little bit. So yeah, so Bridge Street, so it got a positive recommendation from legislative matters on the 14th of this month. And now I need a motion, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
And actually, you know what, I need to read it because it's its first reading here. These are these things that are tough to read, but maybe Laura, you could put up the map and I'll do the nonsensical reading part of it. Okay, so this is an ordinance that, upon the recommendation of Mayor David J. Narco's Transportation and Parking Commission, relative to parking on Bridge Street, and it's saying that the section 312-102 of the Code of Ordinances be amended as follows. And so this is on Bridge Street. There used to be parking on both sides. Now it's going to be southeasterly, 0.200 feet southwesterly of Pomeroy Terrace Centerline, 0.300 feet northerly of Pomeroy Terrace Centerline. Bridge Street northwesterly, a 0.834 feet northeasterly of Market Street, 0.300 feet northerly of Pomeroy Terrace Centerline. Then section 2, that the section 312-109 Code of Ordinances be amended as follows. That schedule 8 on-street parking meter zones, Bridge Street northwesterly at 0.436 feet northeasterly from Market Street, at 0.834 feet northeasterly from Market Street. This is 8 hours Class 3D, Class 4A parking zone. And that subsection 312-117 be amended as follows. For this is on-street and off-street handicapped parking spaces, Bridge Street northwesterly parking space at a point 418 feet northeasterly from Market Street. That was definitely, I'm sure, helpful for everybody. Okay, we already have a motion on this. I've read it. Discussion. Councilor Jarrett.
I just wanted to note it's 10 hours, not 8 hours, at least in what I'm seeing.
Did I say 8 hours?
That's what I heard.
You did.
Oh, I did? I apologize. 10 hours. Yes, it's the long-term meter red cap 10-hour parking meters. Councilor Nash.
Yeah, I'd like to give a little background on this.
Please.
And if the mayor would like to defer to me. Okay, so I guess it was about a year and a half ago, the city renegotiated its agreement with the depot parking lot. In the depot parking lot, we had long-term meters that allowed people to feed in quarters at a quarter an hour, and also they could buy a monthly permit that I believe is about $45 that would allow them to put the permit on their dashboard, hang it from the mirror, and they could park there for the month without feeding the meter. Typically, the people who use these spaces are downtown employees. And that when we changed the way the depot lot works, some of these people were displaced and that they were looking for parking in other situations. Last fall, people will remember there was a concern by businesses across the street from the Roost near the post office, because those were also long-term parking spaces. And suddenly the demand had pushed those downtown employees to park there all day long. And we, late in the year, late in the fall last year, converted those to 2-hour parking spaces. So this parking zone is an outcome of looking for replacement long-term parking for, and in particular for the downtown employees. I did a lot of outreach around this parking zone and the other. I flyered vehicles for the TPC meeting and to contact me if they had any questions. I knocked on doors up and down the street, spoke to all of the businesses. And I think that the recommendation to meter this zone with the long-term red cap parking is going to be most effective for everybody involved. That the business that had the most questions, understandably, is Historic Northampton, as these spaces are along where the museum is. But the assessment of myself and with the parking folks with the city is that the meters will create turnover and that there actually will be more available parking for Historic Northampton rather than getting people parking there all day and not paying a fee. Let me see, what else was there in there? There's also, this zone creates a handicap parking space at the very front of it, closest to downtown, which will be available for people going to Historic Northampton, and if needed, going into the shopping, into the stores right there. So, you know, as the counselor, I and as the TPC member who did a lot of outreach on this, I recommend that we vote on this positively tonight.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions, thoughts, feelings? Okay. Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
and Councillor Shara.
Yes. Okay, that passes in first reading. Next is 20.015, an ordinance relative to metered parking on Pleasant Street. This is a first reading for this. Maybe Laura can put up the diagram.
Move approval?
You want to do that before I read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Before that, I'm going to recognize Councillor Foster, please.
Thank you, Councillor Shara. So as you know, I'm the executive director, maybe you don't know, I'm the executive director of All Out Adventures, and our organization is located in that stretch of Pleasant Street where we're discussing the ordinance, and I do anticipate a potential for impact on our organization. So I will step out of this conversation and not vote for it, or not abstain from voting.
Okay.
Are you abstaining or recusing? I think.
Excuse me, thank you. I am recusing myself.
Got it.
Thank you. So now, is there a motion?
Well, there was a motion. There still is.
Okay.
Second.
I stand by it.
Motion's been made and seconded. And okay, so this is 20.015 relative. This is upon the recommendation of Mayor David J. Nurkowitz. Metered parking on Pleasant Street, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of North End City Council assembled as follows. That subsection 312-102 of the Code of Ordinances be amended as follows. Schedule 1, parking prohibited at all times. Location of towaway zone, Pleasant Street, side westerly, Michaelman Avenue from a point 31 feet southeasterly of Michaelman Avenue, and Pleasant Street on the westerly side from Millbank Place to a point 70 feet northwesterly of Millbank Place. So that's parking prohibited there. And then section 2, this is on-street parking meter zones, locations Pleasant Street side westerly from a point 31 feet southeasterly from Michaelman Avenue to a point 70 feet northwesterly from Millbank Place. And this is that same 10-hour class 3D, class 4A long-term parking class of parking. So any discussion? Councillor Nash, would you like to talk about this?
I love talking about
I
parking.
know you do. I know that you do.
So, yeah, I did a lot of outreach, the same thing, flyering the vehicles, talking to all of the businesses. And in fact, one of the big points of feedback that I got from businesses at Millbank Place was that the parking zone extended too close to one of the exits, and it was very difficult to get to see the ongoing the traffic, and the traffic couldn't see you coming out. And in fact, that was the delay for these two moving forward, other than COVID. That DPW actually pulled it back, reworked it a bit, and amended the parking area. And I want to thank Director Lascalia for pulling it back. And so, again, like the other, lots of outreach, and that as the Ward 3 counselor, I support this getting a positive vote tonight.
Thank you. Other discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Foster's recused. Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Councillor Shara.
Yes.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in first reading. We're going to invite Councillor Foster back. And we are going to take up 20.115, an ordinance relative to parking on Middle Street. This is in first reading. I was referred to Legislative Matters, which gave it a positive recommendation. Want to do a motion now, or should I read it?
Sure, I'd like to move approval, please.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. This is upon the recommendation of Transportation and Parking Commission. In ordinance to City of Northampton, be it ordained the City Council of the City of Northampton and City Council assembled as follows. Section 1, that the subsection 312-102 of the Code of Ordinances be amended as followed. This is Schedule 1, parking prohibited at all times. Locations Middle Street, side south or southerly, from Chestnut Street to a point 51 feet westerly of Chestnut Street. And there's the handy diagram, which will make it far more clear than the words. And Councillor Nash, I know you want to talk about.
I am going to defer to my fellow parking geek, Councillor Jarrett here.
That's incredibly generous of you. Councillor Jarrett, please.
Thank you. Wow, I've never been referred to as a parking geek before. So this came out of a larger conversation with residents around Middle Street parking. A resident asked me to bring the spot closest to Chestnut Street to the attention of the DPW. They sent out an engineer and determined it was not safe that when the winter snows narrow the street. There's a blind corner with the building on the corner with Chestnut, and if the street is narrowed, there's a dangerous situation that occurred with other vehicles turning onto Middle Street from Chestnut. So this is, basically a safety is the reasoning behind this, and I'm very much in support of it. We will lose one of the 3 non-time limited spots on this street. So there's a long history with many of the spots on Middle Street. And there's a long history of workers at the offices nearby filling much of the eastern end of Middle Street until time limited parking was put into place. And actually in very recent discussions with more residents, the reason for having the 3 non-time limited spots was that it came out of a compromise where a few of the spots would be preserved, while the majority of the street would be time limited. My understanding is that these office buildings now have agreements for their workers to park in other nearby lots, and the elimination of one of these spots shouldn't cause undue hardship, but in between the first and second reading, I'm going to engage, talk to some of the local businesses around whether any further changes will be needed, and we're definitely having discussions with many of the residents on Middle Street as well.
Thank you for doing that work and for that explanation. Any discussion, questions? Okay. Seeing none. Roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Councillor Dwight.
Amen.
Hey, we're getting there. I know of no further business.
I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I feel like you're entertaining
Which
a
is
lot of emotions.
Yes, I am entertaining many emotions. Well played. Well played.
Emotions. That was really funny. Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. Roll call, please. Adjourning.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yep.
and Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.